Welcome back, friends, to our podcast, Your World of Creativity. Hi, I'm Mark Stinson, and today I'm going to try something a little bit different. Over the years on this podcast, I've featured conversations with hundreds of creative professionals, authors, artists, entrepreneurs, musicians, scientists, innovators of all kinds, exploring how they get inspired, organize their ideas, and turn their imagination into impact. But creativity also grows from what we read. So today I wanted to introduce a little bit different format of a creative book review from my own library. Just stepping away from the interviews to explore an influential book that shaped my own creative thinking and might inspire yours. Today's selection is an important book on storytelling, meaning, and creative imagination called The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell and Bill Moyers. Now, there's another reason I'm excited about today's episode. The review you're about to hear was generated using NotebookLM. That's Google's AI-powered research and learning platform. So rather than simply reading a summary and my own review, you'll experience the AI-generated audio conversion that synthesizes the book's key themes and insights. It's a fascinating example of how this new technology can help people learn, review, and engage with great ideas in a whole different way. So as you listen, I invite you, of course, to enjoy the content itself, but also notice the experience of learning through this emerging audio format. Have you tried it before? I'd be interested in your thoughts. But for now, let's dive into The Power of Myth.
So in the late 1970s, a young, pretty ambitious film director managed to build a multi-billion-dollar sci-fi empire.
A massive one.
Right, huge. But the thing is, he didn't do it by, looking to the future or inventing some completely novel way of telling a story.
No, not at all.
He actually did it by meticulously copying this, dusty academic blueprint that was written decades earlier by a mythology professor.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is, because it turns out the stories you love the absolute most, the ones that keep you on the edge of your seat or the ones that make you cry in a dark theater, they aren't just entertainment.
Right.
They are actually a kind of ancient source code running quietly in the background of your brain.
It is a totally wild realization.
Yeah.
And figuring out how that source code works, that is exactly what we are diving into today.
Yes.
The source material for this deep dive is a review of a really monumental moment in both publishing and, public television. We're looking at The Power of Myth.
Such a classic.
Oh, absolutely. It's the legendary 1988 series featuring the journalist Bill Moyers in these really deep, sweeping conversations with the mythologist Joseph Campbell.
And, we should clarify right up front, this wasn't some dry academic catalog of old folklore.
Right. No, not at all.
Campbell and Moyers were on this massive mission to basically decode the universal themes and symbols that appear in myths from all around the globe.
Every continent, every era.
Exactly. They looked at everything from indigenous tribal legends to ancient Greek epics, Eastern philosophies, Western religions, all of it. And the goal wasn't just to look backward at human history, but to understand how these stories actively shape our lives and our modern worldviews today.
Because they really do.
They do. Okay, let's unpack this, because the sheer scale of Campbell's work is staggering.
It's hard to wrap your head around, honestly.
It is. Think of it like this. It's like a scientist discovering the hidden DNA of human storytelling. Campbell realized that whether a culture was using the hardware of ancient Greek temples or medieval campfires or modern movie theaters, the underlying operating system is identical.
Yeah.
The code that allows human beings to process change and grief and growth, it's exactly the same everywhere.
That operating system analogy, that hits the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Because what Campbell discovered and what he and Moyer spent a great deal of time exploring is that beneath the wildly different surface details of global myths, human beings are effectively telling one foundational story over and over again.
Right.
And Campbell called this the classic hero cycle, though, you probably know it by its more famous title from his book, The Hero's Journey.
Right. This is the framework laid out in his massive text, The Hero with a Thousand Faces.
Yes, exactly.
Wait, but, how does a mythology professor actually prove that a story from an ancient indigenous tribe and a story from a medieval European kingdom are running the same code? I mean, they look so different on the outside.
Well, he proves it by mapping the psychological sequence of events.
Okay.
And the sequence is remarkably rigid. It represents an evolutionary psychological necessity.
Meaning what? Exactly.
Meaning, we tell these stories because the human brain actively needs a simulation for surviving trauma and the unknown.
Wow, a simulation.
Yeah. And the pattern follows 4 major stages. So first, the hero receives a call to adventure.
Which is almost always an interruption, right? It disrupts their perfectly normal, totally mundane life.
Exactly. And crucially, the hero usually refuses that call at first.
Because human beings naturally fear change.
We hate it. We absolutely hate change. But eventually, they're forced into the second step, which is leaving the ordinary world. They have to cross this psychological and physical threshold into a completely unknown space. And once they cross over, they hit the third stage, which is facing trials and challenges.
Which is where things usually go wrong.
Oh, terribly wrong. They are tested to their absolute breaking point. They often encounter a figurative or even a literal abyss.
The belly of the whale, so to speak.
Yes, the belly of the whale. And if they survive that abyss, they reach the 4th and final stage, which is the return.
But it's not a normal return.
No, not at all. The catch is they don't just come back to their ordinary world the way they left it. They return fundamentally transformed by the experience.
Right, they bring something back.
Exactly. They bring back some kind of new knowledge or an elixir to share with their community.
The review we're looking at highlights a quote from Campbell that I think grounds this whole concept beautifully.
Which one?
It's the one where he says, quote, "Myths are the stories we live by. They offer us a sense of meaning and purpose and help us make sense of the world around us."
That's a great quote. And what's fascinating here is that this cycle isn't just a storytelling trope.
Right.
It represents a universal path of self-discovery that every single human being must eventually undertake.
Every single one of us.
Yeah. I mean, we all start in an ordinary world. We all face moments that drag us out of our comfort zones. We all endure trials, and we are all changed by them. The myth is just holding up a mirror to the human condition.
Yeah.
It's basically a survival manual passed down through generations.
Okay, wait. Let me push back on this for a second.
Sure.
If every single story from ancient Greece to modern Hollywood boils down to this exact same 4-step blueprint, aren't we just admitting that human beings are entirely unoriginal?
How do you mean?
If the call, the departure, the trials, and the return are always there, isn't every story just a ripoff of the same rigid formula? Are we just out of ideas?
That is the most common pushback Campbell's work faces. It really is. But it is crucial to understand that the hero's journey isn't a paint-by-numbers formula for writing a script. It is a pattern of human experience. We aren't copying a formula. We are recognizing a fundamental truth about how human growth actually functions in the real world.
So it's biology, almost.
Exactly. You physically and psychologically cannot grow without leaving what you know.
Yeah.
You just can't. You cannot transform without facing friction or a trial.
So the originality isn't in the structure itself?
No, the originality comes from the infinite ways human beings experience those steps.
Right, the details.
Yes. The different cultural lenses, the unique settings, the specific dragons a particular society actually has to slay. The skeleton is always the same because human psychology is the same.
Yeah.
But the flesh and blood of the story, that is entirely unique to the time and place.
The skeleton and the flesh. I like that. Well, speaking of putting flesh and blood onto that skeleton, we have to talk about the most famous example of this in modern history.
Oh, we absolutely do.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Remember that ambitious young director I mentioned at the very beginning?
George Lucas.
George Lucas. The creator of the Star Wars franchise didn't just accidentally stumble into this universal pattern. He actively used Campbell's academic framework to build his universe.
He really did. Lucas has been incredibly open about this over the years.
Yeah.
He felt that modern society lacked a unifying mythology.
Yeah.
So he intentionally took Campbell's research in The Hero with a Thousand Faces and basically translated that ancient operating system into a space opera.
I mean, it's brilliant. Let's map it out because seeing the code run in real time is wild.
Let's do it.
Okay, step 1. the ordinary world.
Right.
You literally cannot get more mundane than Luke Skywalker being a moisture farmer on the desert planet of Tatooine.
Yeah, it's so boring.
He's literally staring at the horizon, dreaming of being anywhere else.
And then comes step 2, right?
Okay.
The call to adventure.
Which arrives via a hidden holographic message from Princess Leia.
Yep, and a meeting with Obi-Wan Kenobi.
But true to the psychology you mentioned earlier, Luke actually refuses at first.
He does.
He tells Obi-Wan he can't get involved. He has chores to do. He has to stay on Tatooine. Which perfectly implies that stepping over the threshold isn't just a physical move.
No, it's a terrifying psychological surrender to the unknown.
Exactly. And it takes tragedy, losing his family, to force him out of his ordinary world.
And that launches him right into step 3, which is the trials.
The fun part of the
Right. Stepping out into a vast, dangerous galaxy. He's navigating the criminal underworld. He's battling the Empire. And ultimately, he's facing his own abyss in the form of Darth Vader.
And then step 4, the return.
Yes.
He survives the abyss and comes back completely transformed. He's no longer a naive farm kid. He is a Jedi who actually understands his place in the universe.
Right.
It's like Lucas had this perfect cast of Campbell's archetypal molds, but instead of ancient gods or knights in shining armor, he just poured neon glowing sci-fi elements straight into them.
That's exactly what he did. The archetypes are perfectly one-to-one.
They really are.
I mean, you have the mentor figure guiding the hero over the threshold. That's Obi-Wan.
Yep.
You have the wise old man archetype representing ancient knowledge. That's Yoda.
And the ultimate trial.
Right. The villain is Lord Darth Vader.
Even the fundamental concept of the Force itself comes from this research.
It does.
The review specifically notes that the Force is heavily influenced by Campbell's work on the idea of a universal energy that permeates all things.
Exactly.
Lucas basically took these ancient spiritual concepts that Campbell identified across Hinduism, Buddhism, and various indigenous traditions and just gave them a highly marketable sci-fi name.
Which completely explains why a movie about space wizards resonated so deeply and instantly with a global audience.
It wasn't just the special effects.
No. Campbell's work provided the underlying psychological architecture. It didn't just feel like a fun action movie. It felt fundamentally subconsciously true to the audience.
Right, because it was speaking an ancient language our brains are biologically hardwired to understand. That reframes entirely how I watch movies.
It really does.
But, if this mythic framework is just an echo of the human condition, what happens when we pull the camera back from a galaxy far, far away and point it at the listener?
Okay, I like where this is going.
If the myth is a mirror, why does understanding Luke Skywalker's psychological journey matter to your life right now, today?
See, this transition is the core of part 2 of Campbell and Moyers' discussions.
Because it's not just theory.
Exactly. Campbell wasn't interested in just cataloging old stories to put in a museum. He was deeply invested in their active, lived power.
Right.
He constantly encouraged his audience to view the messy, chaotic parts of their own lives as heroic journeys.
There's actually a quote from the source material that captures this perfectly. Let me find it now here. Campbell states, quote, "The hero's journey is a universal archetype that appears in myths from around the world. It represents the journey of self-discovery and transformation that we all must undertake."
Must undertake. That is the operative phrase right there.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, myths aren't just escapism or entertainment.
Right.
They have historically shaped human beliefs, values, and worldviews because they offer us a practical framework for surviving our own internal struggles.
Okay, but it's easy to see the heroism in blowing up the Death Star or, fighting a literal fire-breathing dragon.
Sure.
But let's apply this to everyday reality. How does a regular person map their totally mundane stress onto this grand hero's journey?
Good question.
Say someone listening is facing a really tough, unwanted career change, or maybe they have to move to a new city where they don't know a single soul. Or they're dealing with a quiet, terrifying health diagnosis. How does a mythology professor's framework actually help them navigate that?
Well, it helps because the scale of the trial doesn't actually change the psychological mechanics of the journey.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Let's take the career change example you just mentioned.
Yeah, let's do that.
Say you've been in a stagnant, unfulfilling job for a decade.
Great.
That office is your Tatooine.
Wow.
That is your ordinary world. It is safe. It is entirely known. But it is fundamentally limiting your growth. You are staring at the horizon.
And the call to adventure in real life might not be a mystical wizard showing up at your door.
Far from it. The call might be a sudden, devastating layoff.
Yeah.
Or it might just be a persistent, nagging intuition in your gut that you are meant for something else.
Right.
Leaving the ordinary world means crossing the threshold of safety.
Yeah.
It means quitting or putting yourself out there for interviews in a field you barely even understand.
And the trials aren't physical monsters.
No, the trials are your own imposter syndrome.
Oh, man.
The trials are dealing with brutal rejection emails, navigating financial uncertainty, and waking up at 3 a.m. wondering if you made a massive mistake.
Yeah. The dragons in real life are almost entirely internal.
Exactly. They are your fears, your ego, and your self-doubt.
But when you finally slay that internal dragon, when you secure that new path and find your footing, you have returned transformed. You have a totally new understanding of your own resilience that you literally could not have gained if you had just stayed in the ordinary world.
Exactly. Campbell is arguing that when we frame our real-life struggles through the lens of myth, we stop feeling like passive, unlucky victims of random circumstance.
Which changes everything.
It does. And the review offers another brilliant quote to back this up. It says, quote, "Myths offer us a sense of identity and belonging and help us understand our place in the world. They are the stories we live by."
So, by recognizing the mythic structure of your own stress, you realize you aren't the first person to face the terrifying abyss of the unknown.
Far from it.
You are participating in a human tradition of adaptation growth that goes back to the dawn of time. You essentially become the active hero of your own narrative.
But that reframing provides immense psychological comfort.
It really does.
It takes the terrifying messiness of life and reveals the hidden architecture beneath it.
But, if this mythic framework is so incredibly effective at helping an individual survive a layoff or a health crisis, what happens when an entire society agrees on the same myth?
Now we're zooming out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we all share this underlying narrative DNA, how does that affect the way we build civilizations together? Because that scales Campbell's work from personal therapy to global architecture.
And that scale is exactly the focus of Campbell's massive 4-volume masterpiece, The Masks of God, which he and Moyers discuss at length.
Okay.
They pull back the lens to look at the role of mythology, not just in individual psychology, but in modern society as a whole.
And they make a point that completely upends how we usually think about progress.
They really do.
They argue that myth is not something we evolved out of once we invented the scientific method and the internet. It is a living, breathing tool.
Yep.
Let me actually read the quote from the review because it sets up a really bold claim. It says, quote, "Mythology is not just a relic of the past. It has the power to transform our lives and our worldviews and help us create a more just and sustainable future."
This raises an important question.
Yeah.
How do we apply these ancient structures, these stories of heroes, gods, and universal energies to complex, modern global issues? Like, how do stories about slaying dragons actually help us build a sustainable future?
So what does this all mean? Because when I hear the phrase just and sustainable future, my brain immediately jumps to practical structural things.
Right, hardware.
Yeah, I think of renewable energy grids, economic policies, supply chain logistics, human rights legislation.
Sure.
So how do ancient spiritual stories about facing trials actually help us build structurally sound, sustainable societies in the modern world? To be honest, it feels like a massive leap to connect mythology to infrastructure.
It totally feels like a leap.
Yeah.
Until you realize that every structural change in human history is downstream from a shift in cultural values.
Downstream. Okay, explain that.
A society's myths dictate its mindset, and its mindset dictates what it builds.
Can you give me an example of how a myth actually builds a system?
Absolutely. Think about the myth of the divine right of kings in medieval Europe.
Okay, the prevailing story that a monarch's authority was granted directly by God.
Right. Because society collectively believed that myth, they built feudal structures, castles, and heavily stratified economic systems.
Wow.
The myth literally built the infrastructure. But when the cultural myth shifted during the Enlightenment to the story of inalienable human rights, the idea that every individual possesses inherent value, the physical structures of society changed.
That makes so much sense.
Right. We built democracies, voting booths, and public courts. The story changed, so the physical world changed.
You cannot build a sustainable world if the underlying worldview of the society doesn't actually value interconnectedness.
Exactly. You can engineer all the solar panels and wind turbines in the world.
Yeah.
But if the prevailing cultural narrative is still driven purely by short-term extraction, domination, and individual selfishness, if the culture's myth is that we are all isolated actors fighting for scraps, those sustainable structures will eventually fail.
Because they won't have the cultural foundation to survive.
Exactly. Throughout The Masks of God, Campbell explores how myths historically serve to bind communities together.
Right.
They gave ancient people a shared understanding of their relationship to nature, to the cosmos, and to each other. When Campbell talks about a universal energy like the inspiration for the Force in Star Wars, he is talking about the mythological understanding that everything is deeply, fundamentally connected.
So that if our guiding modern myth is that the Earth is just a dead resource meant to be conquered, our economic and environmental policies will perfectly reflect that story.
They have to.
But if our guiding myth shifts, if we adopt a story that views humanity as stewards within a complex, interconnected web of life, our policies, our supply chains, and our legislation will naturally adapt to reflect that new story.
The story we tell ourselves about who we are literally dictates what we build.
Wow.
Campbell and Moyers are ultimately arguing that we need new myths, or maybe a deeper, modern understanding of the old ones, to unite us. We desperately need a shared story to help us navigate the unprecedented global trials we are facing together on this planet.
That takes the power of myth from being just a fascinating history lesson to, like, an urgent, practical toolkit for the future of the human race.
It really does.
Yeah.
We are all on a collective hero's journey, facing global trials, and we need a narrative that helps us survive the abyss and return transformed.
That is profound. It brings the entire deep dive full circle and shows exactly why this conversation from 1988 is still so incredibly relevant today.
Absolutely.
Let's wrap up by reinforcing the primary conclusion of our source material. The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell and Bill Moyers isn't just an intellectual exercise for academics.
Not at all.
It is a deeply accessible exploration of the human code. Whether you are a dedicated student of literature, a spiritual seeker looking for meaning, or just someone curious about why you love the movies you love, it provides a framework that permanently changes how you see the world.
It changes how you see the world, and more importantly, it changes how you see your own potential within it.
Yeah.
It reminds you that your personal struggles are part of a massive ancient tapestry.
I want to leave you with the final quote from the review because it summarizes the mission of this deep dive perfectly.
Go for it.
It says, quote, "Myths are not just stories. They are the vehicles through which we understand the world and ourselves. They offer us a sense of meaning and purpose and help us create a more just and sustainable future."
It is such a powerful reminder that the media we consume and the narratives we construct about our own lives hold immense tangible power to shape reality.
They really do. And that brings us to a final lingering thought for you to take away and mull over. We've spent this time talking about the hero's journey and how the crucial final stage requires returning transformed from your trials so you can share what you've learned with your community.
Right, the return.
So look at your own life right now. Think about the specific trials you are currently facing or the internal dragons you have recently overcome. What is the newly discovered knowledge, the elixir that you are bringing back from your own journey?
That's a great question.
And more importantly, how can that hard-won insight be used to help build that better, more just, and sustainable world around you?
Because you are the hero of your own narrative, standing at the threshold.
Yeah.
The only question left is, what will you do with the knowledge you've brought back?
We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. The next time you find yourself captivated in a dark movie theater or turning the pages of a great book, remember you aren't just recognizing a familiar rhythm.
No.
You are recognizing a reflection of your own extraordinary journey. Stay curious, keep exploring, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
Well, hi, it's Mark again with a couple of closing thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this little experimental format. And most important, I hope you were inspired to pick up the power of myth for yourself. You know, Joseph Campbell reminds us that myths aren't simply stories. They're living frameworks that help us understand our creative challenges, transformations, purpose, and shared human experience. So whether you're an entrepreneur, artist, or leader of any kind, navigating your next chapter of life, the hero's journey is still unfolding for you. I'd love your feedback on today's format. Did you enjoy hearing the NotebookLM generated audio overview? Would you like to hear more episodes like this of creative, classic books using emerging AI learning tools? Or do you prefer the traditional guest interviews? Let me know on LinkedIn or through the podcast website you're listening to now. Your input's really important to shape where we go next. If you enjoyed today's episode, I hope you'll subscribe, rate, and review Your World of Creativity on your favorite podcast app. So until next time, keep reading, keep learning, keep asking better questions, and together we'll keep unlocking your world of creativity. Bye for now.